Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Hope and the Truth. I'm Lance Parvin. As always, we're here to renew your hope and strengthen our faith in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Our guest today, Dr. Jacqueline. Thank you for joining us. And you're coming all the way from, what is the name of your office? Business.
Oh, the Wellness Trinity.
Wellness Trinity.
I was like, I'm from California.
Well, she's from California, but the Wellness Trinity. And so tell us a little about your business before we get into your testimony.
Okay. So I'm a naturopathic doctor, and I help people get to the root of their health challenges, meaning I look for the toxins and I look for the deficiencies. So I do a couple different tests. I do live and dry blood cell analysis, and I do a Zytoscan, which is a biofrequency machine. And I look through all these tests and see where people are imbalanced. That's basically the root of people's health challenges is toxins and deficiencies. So once I figure that out, then I help people detox, and then I help people work on their deficiencies. And then, it sounds simple, but it's usually, it could take some time.
There's a complexity to this.
Yeah, there's an art form to it. So I'll work on their adrenals and thyroid, make sure they're calmed down, parasympathetic mode. People are running from the bear too much. Sympathetic, and they're not ready to heal. And then a lot of times the next thing I'll do is work on their gut, and that's a huge part of this because if our gut's not functioning right, nothing works right. And the liver and gallbladder and kidneys kind of come next in my program. And then heavy metals. So I kind of take people in those step to step. Sometimes some things overlap a little bit, but I don't like to, move from the first thing to the last thing until some of the other things are worked itself out, so they're detoxing properly.
And we were talking before the interview started, and it's actually, we're at a different time. The atmosphere is changing. I'd say there's a lack of education. For as much information as we know, we don't know much. So I think a huge thing of what you're doing, which is great, is you're educating your patients. It's not just like you take this and go away. There's a lot of uneducated consumers. And I know when I was doing medical consulting, people would just be grateful to be like, thank you. You've empowered me with information, because they don't want to become reliant on something and not know, because then people go, wait a minute, I'm not learning. It's like a person who's relying on a trainer and they haven't learned any exercise. Right. It's like that next month, it's like, what do I do? Yeah. Have you seen an increase in obviously I'm sure you have in your business? What is one of the most rewarding things that you see, aside from giving someone hope, but kind of informing them? What have you been seeing? What got you into this? I think that's my main question. Like, were you always interested in health and wellness, or did it evolve over time?
Yeah. Well, that was like 3 questions.
I know. I do a lot of stuff like that. Well, let's start with it. What got you involved in this?
Okay. So I feel like it was always a calling on my life. Ever since I was young, I remember saying, I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up. But I didn't know what that was. And throughout most of my life, I just grew up, did my thing. And I went to school. My undergrad was in business administration. And I was a personal trainer at the time. So I had and I had a business doing that too. So I had a passion for fitness, and then I realized more my passion was in nutrition at the time. And so I just kept studying, and then that led me down the path to wanting to learn more about healing and really getting to the root of people's health challenges. So that's kind of the short-winded version of that.
Gotcha.
The other thing is my dad died of cancer when I was 9 years old. So when you're face-to-face with death, of someone that's in your family, it makes you, there's 2 things I've seen. You can be more apt to want to live, which is the way I went. That's how I found Jesus, and that's how I found natural health. Or, you could be the opposite side, and kind of your soul dies with that person too. And I've seen the opposite side as well. So I just was on this quest for life. I wanted to live the best life that I could. So that's all the good part of it, minus the testimony.
No, I like that, right? And that's great, because what a great transition. And see, I didn't know this. I'm getting your testimony for the first time. But what's interesting is the same way that I found the Lord, or He, woke me up, was my wife died of cancer too. She had stage 4. It was an ongoing thing. It went from breast to brain to lung. And so people have a hard time. They go, wait a minute, you were an atheist, and then you found the Lord after you went through trauma? But I find that it makes us more empathetic, because when you go through something, now you can talk to someone who has a relative or a loved one pass, because you go, I've been there. We can talk about this, because the Lord won't have us speak in hypocrisy. When we talk about something, you're going to walk through it. So why don't you give us, wherever you'd like to start, your testimony of what happened, how you found the Lord.
So, I feel like some people they have this encounter and they just know. For me, I feel like it was a process. and maybe there was a point where maybe the lights kind of came on louder at some point. But I grew up Catholic. I didn't really know what God was. Once I got confirmed and all, I left the church, and I was like, cool, I don't need this anymore. So then a year later, I was going through some things. This was when I was 17 years old.
Okay.
And I just felt like I needed God. I didn't know what that was. And my friend brought me to the Christian church, and I knew I liked it. I love the worship. I'm a worshiper at heart. And I just kept going. So throughout my college experience, I kept going, and no one ever really what's that word when they take you under their wing? Mentored me or really taught me, discipled me. That's the word I'm looking for. What it was mean to be a Christian, and I was going my own way, and I had I had some daddy issues. I was missing a dad, growing up, so I ended up down a little bit of the wrong path even while I was a Christian. So I came to Las Vegas thinking I was a dancer before I competed. And so I competed at very high levels, and my boyfriend at the time, he was like, well, why don't we just go to Las Vegas and, you can, this is after college, and I was like 21 years old and I'm young, and he's like, why don't you just pursue dancing? And I have a business degree at that point, and I had a personal training business, but I was like, yeah, I'm young, why don't I experience my life, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I came to Vegas, and while I was auditioning for different shows to be in, I started serving and in restaurants, and so I served, I hosted it, or I was a hostess. And then at some point I ended up getting into a show, which was not really the nicest show, but the Lord saved me from that too. And then I didn't have a job. So I left my other job to do this show. The show, they didn't want my part after a month. And so then I was jobless. And I was living with my ex at the time, and he was a poker player, an up-and-coming one, and I needed to get another job. And so about maybe a month and a half later, I was just like, God, what do I do? And I went to a strip club, and I got a job cocktailing at a strip club. And it was kind of a, ugly environment to be in, obviously. Who wants to be in a strip club? But I saw money, and I was like, instead of going down trying to pursue my dancing career, I was like, this is easier. I'm making money, and and I was good. I was good at selling bottles and doing bottle service, and these girls all hated me because of that, because I was very vicious and trying to get my clients throughout the night. But I was there for about a year, and right away I knew it wasn't really my favorite thing to do, but I was chasing money, and I ended up at that point, about a year later, I was thinking maybe I'd try to get promoted in the company and a better place in the club, but that wasn't really working out either. It wasn't really even a better place for me to make money, and my friend started looking at day clubs to cocktail at. So I was like, okay, well, why don't I do that? And so I won't, it seems like it'd be a little bit easier for me to make money. So I did that. I got a job at, should I say where?
No, you can. Okay. You can say where. Not an advertisement.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So I ended up working at Tao Beach, and it's at the Venetian. It's a day club, so it's a club during the day at a pool. And I did that for a summer, and they liked me, so they kept me, and I ended up opening up a newer club called Marquee at Cosmo. And so I did cocktails for about 2.5 years, and I always had a passion for health and wellness. I was studying all the time. I would go home and I'd open my books and or watch. I learned. I call it YouTube University. I learned a lot of my stuff on YouTube and learned how to cook healthy and all that. Even during that process, but really, I hate to say it, but I was selling my soul. It is not what I wanted to do. I was in a nasty environment. I was like, wearing clothes I shouldn't be, flirting with guys to try to make money. And, it's smoky. It's in the dark. It's not really good for your circadian rhythm. And I had this whole other thing that I feel like God was trying to pull out of me. And I was just blinded, dating the wrong person and in the wrong environment. And one day, things started kind of getting a little nasty with this guy. And I think it took getting to that point where it was just like, it could have got really bad, but the Lord was like, and that's what saved me out of the environment. I don't even know if I want to go all the way into that. But basically, something happened with some other people, and it kind of just, while it was a bad situation, it opened my eyes, and I was finally like, after 5.5 years with this guy, I was like, I'm done. Yeah. So I got rid of him, and then, so it was good, and it was like, what is going on at the same time? Because I, had these daddy issues. I had this missing father figure in my life, and while my mom she loved me, I wasn't really close to her, so I didn't really, I was just kind of on my own in a way, and I didn't have any discipleship in the church. So I don't want to blame it on anyone. It's I'm my own person, and I made my own decisions, but I just when we're not nurtured growing up or with the people around us, maybe taking that role, you can get really lost, and that's where I was.
All of these different things, trying to fill a void, and we don't know what.
Yeah, I was crying nonstop for a long time. I was just like, God, like these holes in my heart were just, it was hard, not having someone near me, and I was happy not to have that guy, but at the same time I was just like so lost. So I just kept asking God what my purpose was, and I kept seeking him more and more, and soon enough, I was waking up with visions every day. I'd wake up and I'd write these things down. I'm like, okay, I got to go do this, I got to do that, and I at some point ended up just getting rid of all my things and traveling around the world for a year, living like a gypsy, seeking how it, what it means to live life to the fullest. And I was writing a book while I was doing this, and each place the Lord sent me to, there was a purpose. And I was, like I said, I was journaling and I was writing a book at the time. It's there. I have it all together. I just, in God's time,
when it's time,
it's right. It'll get out if it's His will. I will pray about that some more. Some things maybe you don't want everyone to know. But so He sent me. The first place I went was, first of all, I was so disgusted by Las Vegas with everything that happened and in the nightlife and with that situation. And I was just like, oh, get me out of here. I was supposed to go somewhere. I just didn't know where I was supposed to go. So I was trying to figure it out. I was going to California, and I was, at that point, I was just like, okay, I'm going to do what I love now. So I was going to all these different restaurants, healthy restaurants, trying to figure out, I just liked healthy, yummy food, right? So I wanted to see what was going on. So I go to Southern California a lot. And then I ended up packing up my stuff and driving across the country. Wow. Actually, before I did that, I went on a mission trip to Africa.
All right.
And that's really what opened my eyes. I went from making all this money, I make $1,000 a night serving cocktails and doing bottle service in the nightclub, and then people didn't really value money, and they were just throwing stuff around, and even the girls, and I hate to say it, some people I was working with, we make $1,000 a night, and it wasn't enough. And I'm like, I get this letter from this kid I was sponsoring in Africa, and he was so grateful to have, I gave him maybe about $300 to $400 for a year to support his family and him go to school, and it just opened my eyes when he sent me a letter back saying how it changed his life, and I was like, that was like my tip for a slow day. And so and that changed his whole life. So I go to Africa, and I'm making all this money, and people are not being too grateful, and then I go to Africa, and the spirit was alive, but they had nothing. And so it opened my eyes, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So I literally came back with a suitcase with nothing in it. My family was laughing at me. I was like, how do you go to a place like that where they have nothing and you keep what you have,
Of course. Yeah.
So after that, I drove my car to, I stopped in Arizona and Texas. I thought I was moving to Texas at the time. And then I drove to Florida, and I did this program. It's called Hippocrates Health Institute.
Okay.
So they heal people with a raw vegan diet and lots of enzymes, probiotics, and natural remedies, and everything of that sort. So I was on their program. I did that, and it just opened my eyes more to the natural health world, and that's I think really what kind of sparked more of my interest into healing. where it was before it was training, then it was nutrition, and then because I even at some point had a healthy food business even after that, until I realized that wasn't really where I belonged. Food is good, but it wasn't my business.
Wasn't your thing. I get you.
So I learned all these different types of ways to heal and remedies and things of that sort. So I knew I wanted to learn more. And after my trip, and in that trip I also found family in the Philippines, Australia, and just missing family on my dad's side that I didn't know all my life. So that was really healing as well. So it was a lot of finding my purpose, but it was also a lot of healing. Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally at the same time. And actually that's when I really was like, I accept you, Jesus. Because I was going through some spiritual warfare when I was at that institute. People were they were promoting peace and all that kind of stuff that you hear, and when anyone's trying to be healthy. But I was like, well, why Jesus? I knew I liked this. I knew something was going on in my heart, but I didn't know why. And then I knew why one day when I was like, I felt like my soul was leaving my body. I was having this attack, and I just started screaming Jesus. And it was fine after. And the lady I was being the teacher, she told me, she's like, just sleep with your Bible and just scream Jesus. If you need to. And that's what saved me from that.
It's an interesting thing because again, we're exposed to light and darkness, so we can make an honest choice. People sometimes wonder. It's funny. I was talking about this earlier, is that when the people who Jesus called were considered the worst of the worst, right? Mm-hmm. Fishermen who swore, tax collectors that were lustful, greedy prostitutes. These were the ones who saw Jesus. Mm-hmm. And they actually recognized it. And so when people have a preconceived notion, they're like, well, why would you go through all of this stuff? It's number one, so we can make a choice in honesty. And then we see like, wow, when I was making my own decisions, I was a catastrophe. When he starts... and we start listening, you're like, wait a minute, you always wanted the best for us. We have a good father. Mm-hmm. And it starts filling in the holes that we had, but we had to go through stuff. People sometimes look at it like, I'm cursed. I'm like, you're not cursed. It's for correction. Mm-hmm. And when we can see the big picture, because we can just take a step by step, you start to see, it's like, wow, if I would have listened to him the whole time, when we start, it's beyond what we can imagine. We still have a small imagination of what can be. He goes beyond. Like, you got to travel the world to heal, to find your calling, to do this. And it's funny how I was in the same place. You're seeking money. Mm-hmm. And then you start to see, wait a minute, I don't need any of it. Money's a tool. Yeah. Money's a tool to help other people and do his will. And then once you stop worrying about it, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. I don't have to worry about this. It's like a preconceived thing that's put out, almost like it's bondage from the world saying, worry about this. When Jesus said, you don't have to worry about this stuff. Yeah. Like he knows our needs. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times we confuse them with wants. Mm-hmm. And when we get that, clarity, we say, wait a minute, this is all stuff I wanted, but I didn't need it. It wasn't making me happy. Yeah, and when you went to Africa, I went to Central America, you start going to different places. Yeah. You see the simplicity. Yeah. And their faith is so much greater than ours. Yeah. What the lacking is education and resources. So that's kind of a trade-off. And it was a good point that the machine gun preacher made when we spoke to him, is that, he has orphanages in Africa, and he goes, their faith is beyond, because they don't have this option of doctors. They don't, like they're praying, they go, that's how we're going to get better. What we can do there is help education, bring resources, stuff like this, and that's where that combination East versus West comes in. Yeah. But again, I think a lot of this stuff, especially the time that we're in, it's shaking people of preconceived notions of Christ, what we think he's going to do, what spiritual things actually are, what's actually going on, and getting people away from judgment. Yeah. Because when you look at another person, it's like, wait a minute, I can't judge this person. My life was a mess. I was a professional criminal. So how can I look at this person and say, how can you still do that? It's like, well, I didn't wake myself up on my own. Right. It took a subtle change over time for you, but then you had that aha moment. Yeah. And I think for all of us, there's things that happen throughout our life, even when some people have a dramatic shift. But and then you look back on all and you're like, oh, that was all purpose. It wasn't an accident. Right. It was all purpose. Yeah. So, I mean, you've come a long way, but you start to see that all of it was training for you. Right. To be ready for now. Yeah. Well, and I feel like even... it's part of my calling. Now I have, that's how we kind of met through, our passion to help with human trafficking. And, while I wasn't a prostitute or even a stripper, I still feel like I was, I was being a victim of that almost, a victim of human trafficking almost, because
I had a boyfriend who pushed me to be in that field
Mm-hmm.
and kept me in that field until I got rid of him.
Yeah.
You know, and he took my money, you know, and I mean, it was mutual. Like he was budgeting and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, in a way, it was almost like a pimp. And you know, bless his soul. I wish the best for him and his family and all that. He had no idea what he was doing, and I forgive him. But at the same time, you know, we have to be careful who we date as a result, and who we surround ourselves by. And so anyway, my point is now it gave me a passion for a ministry that, you know, for people that really, you know, we're missing fathers, we're missing mothers, and we need to love on people and meet them where they're at, be spiritual mothers and fathers, so that people don't get caught in those messes when they have those things missing. So yeah, and then fast forward a little bit. So once I was finished traveling, I again felt very lost. I was like, that's actually when I really was like, okay, God, what is my purpose?
Yeah.
I was reading The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren, and really trying to figure that out. And you know, it was giving a lot of insight, obviously, with visions and all this stuff during the trip. But I went from job to job and business to business I was starting, and I mean, it wasn't easy. You know, it's not easy going from you know, making all this money, and then you think that you have this entrepreneurial drive. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's
not.
It is, you know, you can have, if you do it and you know, you push through and you make it, like, I mean, it's amazing on the other side. I'm so grateful that God kept pushing me, but it was not easy. Let me tell you, I ended up going home and I lived with my family, and I love my family, but it was a mess.
Yeah.
I was living with my aunt, and I love you, but it was not easy.
It's a change. It's a dramatic change.
It was not easy.
Yeah.
So you know, and at the same time, the Lord was doing a lot of healing in that as well too. I mean, I was sent home for more than just me trying to pursue more of my schooling and doing this business. But I had a lot of healing in my family too, I believe. And so once, you know, I went home to study and get the business going. Once I really figured out, okay, this is what I needed to focus on. And in that I had different jobs, and I was personal training again, and then I ended up working for a dentist. And it was a lot of work, you know, to try to work a full-time job and to study and start a business all at the same time. I mean, I got gallstones, I think, because of it. I was losing my hair.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
stress. It's definitely stressful.
And then the Bay Area, there's traffic like crazy. Like it's like I didn't realize what I got myself into when I found that job, the dentist job. But anyway, it taught me a lesson on stress, and that's why I very much and try to get people, and you know, out of that as much as possible, or support them in their supplements they're taking to help calm their body down. But you know, with going through all that, it really made me appreciate where I'm at today and how God is just so faithful and so good. And you know, you might have messed up, and He'll still turn everything around and use it for good.
Yeah, all things work for the good of those who love the Lord. And people sometimes say, well, I messed up here. He knew what we were going to do.
Right.
We just have to take that first step and say yes. We don't know the whole plan. We get piece by piece. Sometimes I assume I know the whole plan, and I was quickly shown I didn't know the whole plan. I do step one. But when we start walking, Jesus said He's never going to leave or forsake us. We just have to have faith, and it's a test of faith each day, and that's the key thing. You know, people they mistake it sometimes. Jesus said, "Take up your cross and walk." Right. And those who endureth to the end. So that's not a sitting there like a walk in the park. We're going to go through some stuff, but we're not going through it alone. And we can start to see when these things happen. One of two things happen: we complain and blame the world, or we embrace it and go, "Thank you. What am I supposed to learn from this?"
Exactly. Yeah.
And the moment we make that switch in our way of thinking, your life will change. Because you'll understand it's not for your destruction. It's for our growth.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that some people don't. They're like, why me? And I go, you have a purpose. That's why God sent you here.
Yeah.
How can people get a hold of you? What's the best way? What's the website?
So my website is thewellnesstrinity.com. And you can call me. My phone number is 510. Let's see, which one am I giving?
I don't know. Give the office
that's
one.
my office
Probably
one. Yeah.
give the office one. Let's give the office one.
Yeah, it's 510-898-6737. You can also email me at Dr. Jacqueline, that's JACQUELINE, at thewellnesstrinity.com.
And we will post the website on there just in case you didn't follow that. And this way you can check her out. Sister in Christ doing amazing things and amazing testimony over time. And again, your love and compassion for people in need, you went through it, so they'll relate to you.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing with losing someone, being in a field where you felt like you're being sold, you can now relate, because that's the one thing people don't get. When someone goes through something, you can see the sincerity. Spirit knows the spirit. And when someone else is sitting there, whether you're talking about it, you're trying to sympathize, or you can actually empathize because you've walked it.
Yeah,
God puts people in our lives because they're like, wait a minute, you know what I've gone through. How are you making it? It goes, Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's the key thing. Thank you so much for coming by today.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to say one more thing.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm called a naturopathic doctor. So when people think of me, they probably think, okay, well, I'm going to get some herbs or enzymes, some physical things. But really what I'm dealing with is the whole person. And, all these things that we go through, it is part of someone's healing journey we have to address. Sometimes you might see where someone might have got stuck, and it's like until they deal with that bitterness and resentment or anything like that, they might still, I can give them all the good, healthy things that they need, foods and supplements, but they need to deal with those things as well, too. So that's something I just, want your audience to take into account, is we have to look at the person as a whole when you're trying to heal the body.
Beautifully put. As always, seek the Lord. If you're seeking truth, you will find him. Give your life to Jesus Christ, and we'll see you next time on Hope and the Truth. God bless.